y'all, welcome to Scrappin with Sheri and page 94 in the sketchbook. Now I immediately was thrown off by this page because there's a tent on it. We are not tent campers. We do like to hike, but we like to go back to our hotel at night and have a good hot bath. So I debated about whether to try to change this up, and I felt like overall the feel of the tent gives me the outdoor feel, and I decided I'm okay with that, even though we don't tent camp. So I pulled this piece of paper. I cannot remember the name of the collection this is from. Some of you who keep up with the names will know this right off the bat, but it has little tents on it, and I thought that would be a cute background page because they've got a really busy background page. So that's going to be our background page. I also pulled this brownish orangish color, which is the color of the tents on here, and I've gotten that from the Leave Nothing Behind collection. I found this dirt paper from one of our farm collections that we had, and I found this green plaid, which I really like, from a backyard barbecue specialty pack that we had. And I know that none of these come from the same collection, nothing about this matches, but I am trying to use up bits and pieces of collections that I had left, and I felt like these colors work well together because I have this one paper that ties everything together. I did also pull these stickers that I'm pretty sure came from this same collection, and maybe the name's going to come to me while we work today. If not, y'all include it in the comments to help out your friends, but I felt like this might be a good addition to that. So in looking at it, I think probably what I need to do is build my tent first. And I wanted to make the tent out of this green plaid. I liked it because when we open it up, I like that I've got the stripes inside. There isn't really much blue in this, but I don't think this detracts from that at all. And the greens are very complementary. Now, in making the tent, I'm going to need my 12-inch trimmer. And the first thing that it tells me about the tent is it's 7 inches tall and a 7 wide base triangle. To me, that seems really, really large. If I'm looking at a 7 wide base, I'm looking at something that is this wide at the bottom. That's going to take up a lot of my space. And I don't want to go that big because the tent is not the main part of this. If we were tent campers, maybe, but not for us. So I'm going to go with a 5-inch base, which is going to make it that wide at the bottom. And I feel like that'll be a much better use of my space. Now, I'm also going to make this, I'm thinking, do I need to make it 5 inches tall as well? And I think I will. We'll keep with the ratio aspect the same. And on this, I'm just going to fold this very gently to get a center mark. And I'm going to cut up from corner to center on both sides of this. And that just gives me my triangle. Okay, looking like a tent. And then we cut a slit up through the center of that and then just fold it back. So to get the center of that, I'm just going to slide this down to the very bottom so that the sides are even on the little tray at the bottom on the lid. And I'm just going to cut up a little bit and then fold that back. And you see I did tear mine just a little bit right there. But that's okay. They've even got a little journaling strip across there, and I may do the same. So the tent is done. We just need to add all the other details now. So I'm going to set this tent aside. We've got this as our background. Now, because we made our tent so much smaller, we've got a lot of wiggle room here as far as our photos go. And this paper is really, really busy to me. I want to make this large enough that I can get some larger photos. On this, they're all 3 inches high with an extra mat with another mat. And I'm going to use this for that top portion. Now, I was thinking about it, and I would like to make this a 2-page spread. So my first thought was, oh, I need to make this the right size to get to get enough on 2 pages. So I'm going to go with about a 4.5 inch here. That's going to give me enough to have some 4-inch pictures if I choose to have them that large. So it gives me a little excess here to use if I need it for bordering. And I'm going ahead and cutting 2, although I'm only going to make 1 page as we work today. So I've got this at 4.5 inches. I've still got plenty of room for this little tent here. And then they've done a border here. And I decided for that I wanted to use the boot print border since we were hiking. And I've chosen this dirt paper for that. Now, I don't typically do these border punches with the dirt paper or with a patterns paper, but I felt like for this one it may be appropriate. Now, if you'll look on these punches, there are black lines here. If you start your first punch where that black line is, that's going to give you a good starting spot. And then all you've got to do is slide this. Wow, it's going to be hard to see with these little boot prints in here. And you're covering up all the blue area underneath. If I slide it here, you can see the blue. If I slide right there, you don't see the blue anymore. And then you punch again. This is probably why I don't use patterned paper, because wow, it's hard to see where that blue is. I felt like the boot print on this dirt paper would not be too much, but would be just right to give us the feel of these outdoorsy hikes. And I felt like the color would be complementary with what else we've got going on. Now, if I put the boot here, I feel like there are pieces catching. There is enough white to show through somewhat, but I think I may want to put a white stripe behind that. And you'll notice that boot print stays attached, so I'm going to have to cut it off my paper. This is probably one of the hardest things for me when I'm doing a punch that stays attached. I've got a little jaggy edge right there. That's what I kept feeling. When you've got one that stays attached, you kind of want your spacing to be the same on either side. So for me, I'm sliding the edge of this boot to the cutting line and then over that one more little line. That's just going to give me a really thin border. And that's exactly what I wanted. So if you look for things to line up, it makes it a lot easier to do that. Now, I could go a couple of different ways on this. I could put it on that, but we kind of lose the boots on it. And I really want it down here. So I think we need to pull a piece of white behind that just to help it stand out a little bit more. Now, you know, I'll be using a cover sheet. This is from some of my Croptoberfest paper packs, and I always use these cover sheets. Now I'm just going to put this border on here to determine how wide I need that, and I'm going to try to give you a measurement if you happen to be using exactly what I'm using, which I feel like most of you will not. I'm going to go to the last line right here, which is 4, 8, 5, about 1 6/8. Not quite 1 3/4. No, it's not 6/8. About 1 5/8 maybe. And that is a good width. I'm going to go ahead and do one more of those just so I have it for the next page when I get ready to put that one together. And we're through with the white right now. Let's go ahead and stick down what we've got so we can see how we're moving, if we're getting in the right direction at all. You know, I've told you before, I have an idea in my head on the way these pages are going to turn out, but then sometimes as I'm doing them, I think, that's not at all what I had envisioned. Now, this is a punch with some open spaces, but there are plenty of big areas. So I could use my regular or repositionable tape for this. It really doesn't matter. I just chose my regular because it was in my hand at the time. I think sometimes we get so caught up in having to use certain tools for certain things that we slow ourselves down. Okay. Yeah, I like the look of that. I'm going to put it right below this 4-inch strip I've got going. There again, you know, I did the 4-inch strip just to give me some extra room for photos. All right, we've got our tent. And they put their tent right up against the bottom of that border strip, which I can also do. And then here along the bottom, they've got one more strip. It shows it as a 3/4-inch strip. I'm thinking this might be where I want my little mountains and trees border to go. The problem is, if you put this on that, it doesn't really show up. It's too busy. So let's pull a little bit more of that brown and see if we can make a background for this. To make this a little more interesting, I'm going to use one of my decorative blades. So I'm going to use this decal blade. And we've still got plenty of width here. We're going to need one more of those boot prints when we get to that. But this border is not very wide. Let me look at the width on it. It's actually less, well, right about 1 inch wide. So if I go 1 1/4 inches, that's going to give me plenty of room for this. And I'm keeping my straight edge along the bottom. And I think that's going to work okay. Let's see about that before we start changing out blades. And I'm going to leave a little bit of brown showing beneath. And I'm eyeballing this, not measuring. All right, so that gives us this. It's a good way to bring this down and the dirt feel. And then I can set my tent right underneath that. Now, if I even put the flaps under the edge of it just a little bit, that's going to keep the flaps back. And I think that's a pretty nice little layout. So let's tape these things down. I'm going to tack the flap. Once I get the page protector on, it's not going to fly away anyway, but if I tack it while I'm working down here, I think it'll help. I'm just going to run a little tape along this border and attach it directly to the bottom. Now you notice my measurements on this are not the same as theirs, but I did allow a lot more room for the photos at the top. Now, what else could you do on this besides a tent? I was actually Googling last night. Okay, what things are triangle shapes? Obviously, a Christmas tree would work on this. You could make you a little triangular Christmas tree. Pizza slices are triangular. Sandwiches cut in pieces are triangular. You could do a hat, like for a Santa hat or a gnome. There are several things, but for me, it was just hard to think of anything that was triangular, especially going with outdoorsy, because I did want to use some outdoorsy pictures. Now, there's our layout. Let's see where we're going to add pictures. Now, I've mentioned to you before that I am printing my pictures as I go for this particular trip. This was our Ohio, Pennsylvania, New York trip, so I had to stop and print pictures. And what I've done is I've printed a couple per 4x6 sheet. And this is the Cuyahoga Valley National Park. So I did that first so it tells where we were. This was a little gazebo that I just thought was pretty. I love the flowers around it. And I think that shape pulls the triangular of the tent. So that's kind of cool. And then I printed a waterfall that we saw and us on that hike. So I've gone ahead and cut this mat. And I cut a white mat just to help these photos stand out. When I developed them on my printer, I left the little white in between, and that saves me having to mat every single photo on white. It saves me having to worry about my spacing side to side because I've already got the white in between. And all I have to do is stick these pictures on. So I'm going to put those on very quickly. I did opt to go with the white behind because I felt like it really makes these photos stand out. It makes the colors much more brilliant. And, you know, I mentioned to somebody in one of my comments, I am on a white matting kick right now. Seems like everything I do, I want to matte in white. And I like the look of that. Now, that does cut down on what we see for this orangey brown behind, but I think it's okay. And I'm going to go ahead and stick that down. And I mean, overall, this page, I think, is coming together pretty nicely. I'm pleased with the look of it. Probably more pleased than I thought I would be. And that's always a nice surprise. Now, I've still got this big space here. And they did a big box with a small photo and a journaling mat. I don't really want the journaling on this page because I feel like it's heavy with the tint. And I am going to make a facing page. So I printed this one of the two of us with all the rock formations behind us. I matted it on the white from my printer, but it kind of fades into the background. So what I thought initially was this would be great to matte this on because I have extras of it. The only problem with that is I'm really heavy on that color right here. So I actually think that that orangey brown would be a better choice for me to matte on. So I'm going to do that to bring some of that orangey brown down. And I just need my photo trimmer for this. And I'm just kind of eyeballing that. That'll leave me a piece of that for my opposite page too, so that's good. I did develop these on a 4x6 sheet. And I left a little bit of a white border, which in effect is letting me double matte all of my photos without taking up so much space and time. And I'm going to stick these, or this, 2 photos in one, onto this orangey brown color. That was from Leave Nothing Behind. And I'm just going to add that right over here. Now, I could pull it up onto the big prints, but I don't really need to. And in effect, I'm covering up a lot of this print along the bottom because it's pretty heavy. I want some of it to show, but not a ton. So, even though we didn't tent camp, this gives us the feeling of the outdoors. And I like that this plaid brings in our blues because we typically wear blue. I am going to add a couple of little word strips onto this, and it's just because I found these in some of my looking through some of my stash. You know, I'm trying really hard to use up my stash, and I found relax, geology, and vacation. So I'm going to grab the foam squares, and I'm about out of them on this sheet. I'll have to pull me some more. So vacation, so true. And I think I'm going to add these kind of like what they had done, adding them onto the tent. They used it as a little area to add words across. And that's a good way to cover up the little mistake I have there. Maybe take the geology over just a touch more. And these are stickers. Normally I would put 2 foam squares. I don't have 2 right here with me. That's why I am opting for just using 1 right now, but I'll go back and add some on the ends so these don't lay down too much. And then I'm going to cut this one in half because it's a larger foam square and I don't want to waste it in the middle. And I'm just going to kind of center that end to end between those two. I like the colors it pulls and I like the words. All right, so we have page 94 done in the sketchbook. I will make this into the double spread, and I'll show you the whole spread at the end of the video. You also see it at the beginning of the video, but I like the look of this, and we used a tent, even though we didn't necessarily need it. One thing I'm looking at is they also have something right here that I feel like I may need to go back and add in so this design doesn't show through. So I will work on that as well, and you'll see that when you see the finished pages. But until I see you next time, happy scrapping.